Welcome back to MythVision Podcast. I'm your host, Derek Lambert. And we're going to talk about why the ancient world sucked for women. I have with us the queen of MythVision, Ryann, my wife. Welcome to MythVision, sweetheart.
Oh, thanks, honey. Thanks. That's not awkward at all.
Not awkward. Not at all.
No.
We also have an expert Assyriologist, Dr. Joshua Bowen, joining us today. Welcome back, my friend.
Good to be back.
I'm always excited when you're here. You're going to be highlighting law codes and different issues between the older laws before the Bible, what is in the Bible, and our goal along the process is to have the Queen of MythVision to kind of give the modern context perception, like her hip fire reaction to some of these ideas and also her insights as a woman.
I mean, this is the thing that's missing in these discussions so often is men sitting around talking about like, well, this law wasn't so bad for women because X, Y, and Z. And it's like, well, if you don't know what it's like to be a woman, sorry, you don't really have the ability to speak in the same way. So yeah, I think it's really important. I'm excited.
I think so too. We started talking about this yesterday off camera, and Ryann, I'm just going to refer to my wife as Ryann.
That is my name.
It's very difficult to do that. Usually it's boo boo doo doo or like, you know what I'm saying? Some other little nickname that we have for each other. But for this video, we're going to keep it professional. And you could throw your 2 cents in there. So Josh, we talked about rape in the ancient world. We talked about how women were treated as property in the ancient world. Men had it made compared to women, but even then, look at how we do things when we're in control. So where do you want to begin?
Yeah, I mean, I think just in general, sort of laying out the nature, the patriarchal nature, particularly when it comes to the law collections and the way that the law dealt with these issues. I mean, these are documents that are put together by men, right? Because it's a patriarchal society. So when you deal with things like rape, for example, everybody thinks today, and of course, more recently, Jordan Peterson made that unbelievably boneheaded comment about how was it so, have we really come so far? Because it used to be that rape wasn't a crime against a woman, but it is now. And I guess in some sense that's good, he said, but is it really that great? Because now, men aren't able to come and protect a woman in the same way. It was just such nonsense. But I think that understanding that is the way the law and society at large viewed something like the crime of rape is it's not a crime against the woman that gets raped, right? It's a crime against the man that owns the rights to her sexuality. And that's something that is seen in the ancient Near East in general. It's also seen in biblical texts. I think it's really important to recognize that and to get, a woman's feedback on that. Because again, from a man's perspective, we can say things like, well, sure, she has to have sex with the guy, or, sure, she has to marry him. But she'd want to do that, right? Because she was devalued. And while that might be true, it's true in the same way, I think, that like if you watch Schindler's List and you see the Jewish women who are being kept in the concentration camp, like slap their faces or whatever to make their cheeks a little more rosy so that they don't get killed that day when the guards come by. Yeah, that's something that they wanted to not get killed. But that doesn't mean that we then say, oh, well, it's pretty much okay. I think that's what happens in Christian apologetics a lot.
What do you think about that idea? We're married, so the law is different, even in the ancient world for married people. So if Ryann was raped, and we talked about some of this yesterday. So please, if this is sensitive material to you, turn off.
Yeah.
We're going into raw, real life stuff, and that's what Ryann loves to do, is to talk about the real stuff. So if you weren't married, your dad owned you as property. You were his.
Right.
So you were, what is it called? Bad goods. You were.
Yeah, it's the term that's used in the Hebrew is like they translate it to be deflowered, but it means once you've had sexual intercourse, right? And so now your dad's not going to be able to get as much money for you, right? That's really what it comes down to.
Your value goes down.
Yeah.
And then if you got raped, you might feel however you feel, but really it's about how your dad, who is the owner of you, is now screwed with having to either take care of you as a non-virgin because no one wants to marry you and nobody's going to pay the money to do so, or he gets a lot less money for you, or the woman would have to marry the rapist. And so you kind of have these, like, if they know who the rapist is, he'll be held by law to have to like marry her. But I want to get Ryan's thoughts about this part and really give us your 2 cents. This is crazy. The rapist then owns the woman, which kind of lifts the burden of the father from having to take care of the daughter anymore. But you now have to be married for the rest of your life to the person who raped you.
And can you explain why the rest of your life?
Because that man cannot divorce you because he broke a law by raping you. So if you're rapist,
so she gets the privilege of, having to be married for life because he can't divorce you.
Right. Because he screwed up. He's stuck with you. Now imagine being the guy. See how that sounds? Oh, yeah. Imagine being the guy who wants you, purposefully rapes you. And you're like, whoa, I don't like this guy. And now you're stuck with the guy.
Well, that's pretty much how it was anyways, right? They didn't get a say-so in who they got to be with, whether raped or not. They were given away either way. You know what I mean?
Consent, I think, is in these circumstances, if we think about like when you say to your kid, we're going to go get shots, right? You don't really need his consent to get shots for him, right? Or you're going to go to school. It's not really, consent isn't a factor here. So he has to do it. You're his parent.
Right.
So, when a father says, all right, hey, I'm in debt and this creditor is willing to take you as a concubine in order to satisfy the debt, best of luck. Obviously they wouldn't say that, but her consent is not something that's considered. It's a transaction between the two men. Right.
So either way, it would not work for me personally. I'd be beheaded probably, but it's not much different now, as far as the women are devalued based on how many men they have been with or how many sexual partners they have been with. They're devalued from that too. Yeah. But people don't look at it the same way, I guess. But basically it's the same concept.
Yeah. So I think what you're trying to get at is that women are called hoes, sluts, things like that. But a guy who is sleeping with several women is a pimp, a player. It's a good thing that he is. Right. What I find interesting in our social setting is you have that for a lot of women. And usually it's super misogynistic guys who do that, right? But then you have some women, they lean into it and take ownership and they don't let the misogynistic BS bother them. And they are kind of the player who own their sexuality and they sleep with who they want and they have control like a man. So there's some women who are ferocious and they kind of eat through the bitterness from men around them who probably are jealous and wish they could be with them. And they just take ownership, and you can see a lot of that kind of like, I don't know what would be a good example, but horrible example. I'm just going to use it.
Like when Jimmy Snow, I can't remember the pastor, the really fundamentalist, horrible, bigoted pastor
in Texas.
Kept calling him a pumpkin because it was the world's biggest fruit. And he took it and leaned into it. Right. And all of his like social media had as its icon a big pumpkin. Right. He took ownership of it. Right. And it was a great, Tommy McMurtry was the name of the pastor. But it was a big mistake for McMurtry to do because it boosted Jimmy Snow's, social media tremendously. But yeah, so maybe something like that.
I was thinking like Kardashians or something, like, that they've been with several people. Now they're rich, so they have that advantage. But even people who aren't rich. What are your thoughts?
I would say it's more like the girls who want to pursue OnlyFans. Like we had talked about them taking ownership of their, themselves, sexuality and leaning into it. That's what I would look at as leaning into it, Does that make sense?
Yeah, this is a great point that you're bringing up about OnlyFans because it makes me think about what happens in Genesis 38 with Judah and his daughter-in-law. She's a piece of property being thrown around among sons, and one spills the seed. We know what happens to him. I used to really worry about that, by the way. The whole spill your seed on the earth and God will, get you.
I'll get you.
God will get you. But I'm thinking of like,
in her mouth is fine. But.
Yeah, that's okay.
I know that women had life period in the ancient world had less value ultimately, and I hope our morality continues to evolve and we bring more value to life as time goes by. But I'm thinking about women going into prostitution, not concubines or sex slaves. I'd like to get into those discussions too, but like women who went into the occupation of prostitution. I wonder if they're kind of leaning into that. You see what I'm trying to get at?
Yeah, I mean, it's complicated. So certainly like a Mesopotamian goddess Inanna Ishtar, certainly does have that aspect to her, like her personality or characteristics. Conversely, I guess, if you read through the Epic of Gilgamesh, you have Enkidu, when he's dying, curses prostitute Shamhat. And like the way that she's depicted in the curse is describing the terrible aspects of the life of the prostitute. So, I mean, I think it's probably not like a univocal, there's not one way that they viewed that. But yeah, I mean, I see what you're saying. I'm sure that did happen.
Probably depended on the situation. Okay. So the laws, there's some good stuff that we were talking about. Like we're talking about chopping the hand off. What was that one about again?
Yeah. So, in the broader ancient Near East, in the Middle Assyrian laws, you see that one of the things about the law collections, these, if X happens, then Y should happen. Those collections, they're very similar through the millennia. And you find out that there's sort of a similar set of circumstances that each of these collections is trying to deal with. They think about them similarly, and then the punishments or the ways that they're solved are very similar. Even if they're not exact, they're in the same sort of thing. So like if somebody steals something, all the law collections treat that in a similar way. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so in this particular case, it talks about if two men are fighting, and the wife of one of the men, assuming like that he's losing the fight, comes up and grabs the assailant's testicles to try to help her husband. Well, if one of the testicles gets damaged, she loses a finger. If both of the testicles are damaged, then the text is broken there, but it says that both of her somethings get either cut off or gouged out. So, I mean, it's pretty like horrific stuff, right? Mm-hmm. It probably means like breasts are cut off.
Yeah.
But in the biblical text, the same sort of, the same offense, it results in just getting the hand cut off of the woman. But again, it's pretty harsh, right? To say the least, but it's very one-sided, as many of the laws are. Is like when we think about things like adultery is a crime that's committed against the man. It's not committed against the married woman.
Or whoever the adulteress is.
Yeah. So like you can have a guy that commits adultery, but it's the guy who's sleeping with a married woman.
Which is why you brought up that men in the ancient world could be married to several women. Yeah. They were titled something like second wives or concubines or sex slaves or stuff like that. But that was... I'm sure there was wrestling in the households. I mean, we even have the depiction of Abraham and like the struggles between the slave woman and, of course, Sarah.
And these things are specifically talked about. But like, I'm curious from Ryan's perspective, like when men who are Christian apologists, sometimes big name Christian apologists, hear things like this, the way that they respond is to try to soften the law. And so what they'll do is they'll look for potential benefits to the woman. So in the rape circumstance we were talking about, what you will hear all the time is, well, I mean, she's been devalued in that society. And so she might not be able to find a husband. So this is the way that the law is trying to provide for her for the rest of her life. Like, what would your response be? I'm curious to a Christian apologist, particularly a man who says something like that.
So will you go into the story so that other people understand what the story is behind it?
Yeah.
You want me to kind of give the point?
Sure, go for it.
Okay. A guy comes up. We have a story with Abraham and his 12 sons, and he has a daughter, the 12 sons' sister. They go to meet another tribe. There's like serious beef that happens because the prince, I think he was a prince of the other tribe, one of the main guy's sons, rapes the 12 brothers' sister, which is Abraham's daughter. Now, I know this is before the law, but we know how the Bible does. Like they have like, how does Noah know unclean and clean animals? That's a bit anachronistic. because the law doesn't come till Moses. But anyway, like the idea is that she was going to be marrying to their son, and they were going to merge as tribes. The 12 sons go and kill all of them after they circumcise them. They have a fever on the third day and they go and kill them all. Not an actual story that happens, but the point is how do you feel about someone trying to defend the notion that, well, the law, at least she's being provided for?
Right after they've killed my entire family.
Well, nope. I threw you a loop by mentioning that.
Okay, so that's why I wanted him to tell the story that
well,
he told
it wasn't
the other day, you know.
Yeah.
Just to,
it's a law.
So there are different ways that, like, there are different atrocities. When I think about what I have heard men say to these stories,
right,
it just makes me cringe. It's the same sort of feeling that I get when, like, they make the same things up about chattel slavery. But so if you think about circumstance where a man so in Deuteronomy 22, 28, 29, you have a law where it says, if a man finds a woman in the field, seizes her, and rapes her, like lies with her, then the result is that he has to marry her forever. He can never divorce her.
Right. Okay.
And in that circumstance, an apologist will say, like, well, I mean, sure, maybe it's a little harsh, but I mean, at least she's provided for the rest of her life. I mean, my gosh, like, well, what if the law, didn't require that or something? And in fact, I have heard apologists say, man, can you imagine having to be that guy? I mean, waking up, maybe that he just had like a bad night or something and he went and slept. Now he's got to wake up to this woman every morning.
Oh my God.
Yeah. What are your thoughts about that?
So for one, it's not a privilege to stay with someone who's raped you or devalued you even more than what you already were in that society. It's not a privilege, it's torture, and so that's what I would say is it's torture. I mean, nobody wants to live with their abuser, and that's like, a man being abused as a child and then growing up. Do they want to still live with that abuser when they no longer have to, Yeah. No, they'd rather, live in the streets. And that's basically how I feel, I can't speak for every woman, but pretty sure most women would rather live in the streets and fend for ourselves.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I think one critical aspect that men, because of physiology and because of, the way that society is structured here, like one thing that they can understand is the severity. And I know we put the disclaimer up, so sorry. But I mean, like the severity of being forcibly penetrated by someone. That's something that it's just so easy for a guy to move past because they don't, unless it's happened to a man, it's something that you just don't understand. And obviously and it's certainly, I don't understand it from a woman's perspective, but like there's obviously a tremendous psychological aspect to that of having no ability to fight back and having no ability to do anything. But more than that, these are things that I think men need to be made aware of.
Right.
And that they don't.
I want to highlight something interesting about that law and how backwards this is. Imagine he rapes her, right? But she knows the law is going to force her to have to marry him for the rest of her life. Right. He knows that that's the case too. What are the odds that she's going to go try and tell somebody? I mean, if she tells, she's forced to have to marry him.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'd like...
And maybe scared.
I mean...
For her life.
But see, that's the issue, because if she consented and had sex, like that, she could get killed, right? So I mean,
and if she couldn't prove that she was raped, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And what was the proof? Sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, you told the story, so that's the only reason I know. But
I mean, like, so if you go back a little bit in Deuteronomy 22 at the beginning of that section about sex crimes, on a woman's wedding night, if the husband the text talks about if the new husband goes in and they have sex and he hates her, right? He gets really angry with her and he comes out and says, when I went into her, she was not a virgin, right? The signs of her virginity were not there. The case is not for him to prove. That's a subtle thing that I think people miss in the text. Mm-hmm. But the case, it's not like he can make the accusation, right? Now, it's then the onus is now on the woman and her family to prove that she actually was a virgin. And how do they do that? Well, the mother and father have to produce the dress that she was wearing that ostensibly shows the blood. Why I was having a struggle coming up with that word. And that's the onus being on the woman in the family to prove that. How does that strike you?
One, I think it's crazy because maybe he was just small, maybe he was too small. I'm just saying that's not her fault.
Yeah.
But it's a thing. So, I don't think that's right for her to have to prove it, because what if he, for instance, just wanted to sleep with her, and that happens, I'm sure. Men do it all the time. They just want to sleep with you and that's it. Maybe he didn't want to commit to her after he was able to be with her, So that, I think that's a ridiculous law.
Is that in that circumstance, of course, if the family can't produce the bloody piece of clothing, she's stoned to death right there. But best case scenario for her, she's been publicly humiliated by this accusation. If her parents, and I mean, I can't even fathom this. The family has to come out and show this garment, right? I mean, even in a best case scenario, how humiliating must that have been? But the punishment on the guy is a fine. He has to pay the family, I think 100 shekels of silver, but he can never divorce her. And that's the whole point here.
She still has to
marry him.
Wow.
It seems like women are currency. That's really what they're cattle, they're sheep, they're a heightened form of animal.
They're property.
Yeah. And I mean, legitimately seen as they're used to create peace treaties, to try and connect. Yeah. They're like, it's cattle-like. Even the kind of negotiations, hey, I'll give you 30 oxen and whatnot. They had negotiations to make things right. It just seems like that women are currency and they're used as vessels, right? Because even what is the technical term for their understanding of nature? I mean, they thought that it was the man who produced the child. Now we know a little bit better about the whole egg and the idea of the semen and whatnot, and how a baby is birthed, but that it's the man's child. Even the fact that we should dive into a little bit of abortion and the problems of the loss of a child. What happens, if a man's in a fight, right? We talked about a woman grabbing the testicles. Yeah. But what happens if a man's fighting another man and the other wife's trying to jump in? She's pregnant. The guy accidentally elbows and boom, she miscarries. Yeah. They kill that guy, right? Right? They're supposed to chop his hands off or his elbow off, right? Or what happens?
Oh, yeah. I was like, no, Derek. they don't. Now I know where you were going. So this is a common law that shows up in many of the law collections, is dealing with this problem of if a man beats a pregnant daughter of a man or a wife of a man, or this is a concern, and the fetus, she miscarries, or if it considers if she miscarries, that's one punishment, usually monetary fine
for the
value. No, it's paid to the man.
Okay.
But whoever, as a woman in this society, whoever, you're under somebody, right? You're under a man somewhere.
She had no access to that. You're right.
I mean, it's more nuanced. I would say there are degrees of property-like relationships. She's not considered property in the same way that a slave would be considered property. There's certainly an elevated status, and you can see that there are levels of that.
Can you imagine how bad it was for them then?
Yeah.
Because the wife's life is not looking so good for me.
Yeah.
So I can't even imagine.
And that's why I say, from the perspective of the sex, at least from the perspective of the man listening to this, or me speaking about this, we're the one that's in the position of power in the story.
Right.
It's just so hard for us, even when we try to wrap our heads around.
I would say, honestly, to like you had said, a Christian apologist who said those things about, making excuses or making it lighter of the situation about how women were treated. I mean, just put yourself in their shoes. How would you like it if you were raped, and we're not, think of it as you being raped by your worst enemy, because at that point they become your worst enemy, Yeah. Do you want to marry him? That's a privilege for you?
Yeah.
I
think it's even more complicated than this, because we were talking about this a couple of days ago. Men, there's so much more to this in the life of women in a patriarchal society, because it's not just a guy can temporarily put himself in those shoes to a certain extent.
Right.
But we don't walk around all day worried about being attacked. We don't worry about what guy is following us. We don't worry about Am I wearing the wrong clothing today? Boy, it's after 9 o'clock. I need to be careful in this Walmart. Like, we don't worry about those things. And if we do, it's only in very limited circumstances where there are other men in a particular neighborhood or something that might cause us issues. But women, I'm going just off of what I understand other women have said. But I mean, like, it seems like we were talking about it. Like, this is something that you like, women deal with this every day.
Oh, yeah.
It's constantly on their minds.
Women, and now that human trafficking has gotten so bad, you have to worry about your kids.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to, even the boys, honestly, but of course the girls for sure, because they're trying to, I guess, kidnap them and they trap them and sexualize them basically, just for payment. Is that how that works?
Yeah.
So you have to be concerned about that, but there's a lot of like, tracking devices now, a lot more technology to basically be able to abuse or stalk or, get access to women.
Yeah. It's like, it's a much bigger picture. And so I think this plays into, and I'm really hoping that a lot of apologists watch this, because I think it's so important for them to realize. But when we come to something like Deuteronomy 21, 10-14, where it's talking about the captive bride, right? So the story, for the audience is that, Israel is commanded in the previous chapter that when you go out to war, if the city fights back against you, you're supposed to kill all the men, take the women, children, cattle as plunder, right? And these people are destined for slavery. That's what they're destined for. And so in that context, if an Israelite man who's just killed all the men in the city sees among the captives this beautiful woman and says, I'd like to have her as my wife, then it lays out the process. You take her back to your house, you shave off all her hair, you trim her nails back, you make her change out of the garment, the clothing that she's wearing, and put on new clothes. And then she gets 30 days to mourn her family. And then after that, it doesn't say, and then you ask her, hey, are you okay with this, right? Would you like to marry me, right? That's none of that there. It says, after the 30-day period, you may go in and have sex with her, and she will be your wife. And then it says, and actually this is maybe it'd be good to just read it, but I mean, like, I think I'm doing a pretty good paraphrase. But if you find that you no longer want her, you can't just sell her, right? Because you've deflowered her. But these are the things that the Christian apologists look, you can't just sell her. I mean, look at the protection that's given to the woman here. Look, she gets 30 whole days to mourn. My God, like, where else would you see this in the ancient world? It's like...
And what are they really doing? What is the 30 days really for?
Yeah, I mean, I think scholars are of the opinion here that the text is trying to, set this in paint the good picture. But really what's probably happening here is making sure she's not pregnant. Right? Make sure she has a menstrual cycle. So, like, because the point of this, one of the points of this is the man can have a legal heir through this marriage. But like, so from your perspective, if I take the position of the apologist and I say, yeah, okay, sure, it's not great, but look, now she doesn't have to be a slave, and she gets this whole month to mourn. She gets some new clothing out of this, and she has her status elevated. Right? She can't just be sold as a slave. So, like, sure, it's bad, but look, the law is trying to protect her. What's your reaction to that?
Would they want to be married to the people who murdered their family, Because I'm sure that girl had family somewhere that's no longer there. And so now you're just living with murderer, basically, and having to be married to him as if it's, a privilege because you're no longer a slave. I'd rather be a slave personally.
So how would you respond to, this is not a common apologetic response, but it's one that I have heard, that when it says there that she's given 30 days to mourn, that the word there in Hebrew is bacha, and it can mean like to weep. And there are some contexts where it could mean like to be so happy that you weep. And they interpret this as like you're simultaneously mourning how awful your life was with this heathen nation that, God has seen fit to destroy. And you're simultaneously weeping for joy that you get to be married to this man who's part of like the people. So what's your reaction to that?
I would say, yes, weeping could be either way, but we mainly use it for, when we're trying to show that someone is, upset, not joyful. you know?
Like, can you imagine a scenario where you would be thinking?
No, and I don't know where they came up with that, or how did they get to their answer? Do they say like how they came up with this?
Yeah, I mean, it's really nothing more than if it would be like if I said I went to the funeral home yesterday and, you know, the wife of the man that died was, you know, weeping in the front row. Technically, because weeping could be done when someone's really happy, you could say, well, maybe she's weeping for joy that her husband's dead, right? But
I mean, but you most likely you're going to say,
right. If we do the math,
you know,
Honestly,
it just doesn't calculate, you know?
like, does it resonate at all with you
No.
that a woman would say, oh, I'm being delivered from this awful life of my family and I get to spend the rest of my life? But does that resonate at all with you?
No, honestly, I would say she's probably weeping from being upset for her entire life. There's probably no joy shown on these women. You know,
Yeah.
they're not happy to be there.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Can you imagine having to interact and be married to someone that you can clearly tell is not, you know, I'm sure there's punishment for that too, huh? Like the women probably aren't ever happy, you know? Like the chances of her being joyful at all are probably very slim, you know, throughout her time from being captured, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Until, you know, however long. And probably even before the way women were treated, you know, where she was living in her village, or, you know, I'm assuming it's a village. I don't know. You know, I don't see women just being joyful for having life and having to care for their responsibilities, be treated like property, you know, have no say-so in what happens to them or their bodies. I just don't see that as being joyful. But
Yeah.
I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's because I've only seen it, you know, this way, and you know, I don't know, but
Yeah.
I can't imagine that. So
What was I going to talk about? There was something I was going to ask you.
we're talking about the punishments. Is there a punishment for like them not being happy or joyful, you know, or showing like appreciation? Maybe, I don't know. And then you said that
It was going to be really good too.
the good ones always slip away.
Maybe it'll come back up. All right, so
I could throw you something else.
Yeah, we may
if
have
you
to
want.
like do a reset here because
Let me start back.
them good ones slip away, you know, from
it sucks. So I guess one of the things that I would be curious to hear your perspective on, the way in which ancient societies, particularly like in areas of Mesopotamia and the Hebrew Bible, the Old Testament, tried to determine things like intent. So to take it outside of rape and adultery, if you read through Exodus 21, 20 to 21, and it's one of these really well-known slave laws, the law is trying to get at how do we determine if the master intended to abuse and, you know, maliciously beat his slave, or was it just moderate correction beating, right? And the way that they do that is they say, well, if the slave dies immediately, then that must have been malicious. And so then the slave master is punished. But if the slave takes a couple of days to die,
if you drag it out,
yeah, then you know, maybe some other mitigating circumstance came in and that led to the death of the slave. So the benefit of the doubt is given it. But that's how they determine those types of things. So when it comes to determining whether a woman is raped or if she commits adultery, it has to do with her crying out. So the law says if a woman is in like the city or in a house where other people are, like around, will be around the house.
right? Like a village or something.
Yeah.
Okay.
And she claims to be raped, but nobody heard her cry out, then it's assumed that she consented to that and she committed adultery. But if she's out in the field, then there would have been no one around to hear her scream. And so it's the benefit of the doubt is given to her that she didn't consent. So they assume that she got raped. How does that strike you as is it a good test? Is it a bad test? Like, what are some of the ways that resonates with you?
The logic there is just not realistic because men are physically stronger than women. So he could, you know, cover her mouth. He could do lots of things. He could threaten her life. They already don't have, you know, any rights, basically. They have no consent over themselves. So the chances of them believing her either way is also a concern, I'm sure. So screaming out is not always possible or safe for women to do.
Yeah.
Suppose a guy knocks her out. She's unconscious.
Yeah.
which happens.
That's true too.
Then she's raped. Then she wakes up. Where does the law help her in any of that? Well,
It doesn't.
your luck's just too bad for you.
But I mean, like I know the answer to this, but I think male apologists need to hear this. Are there circumstances that you can think of where a woman might get raped and not scream?
Yes, all the time.
Yeah.
Still today. And that's not even a law, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
But why wouldn't they?
because they don't want to be killed, because they're scared for their lives, they're scared they're not going to be believed. There's many reasons, or how they're going to be viewed in society. A lot of women who have been raped even today will not come out, and probably haven't came out to say that because they're not comfortable yet. It's still not accepted or believed, I should say, in a lot of places.
What's interesting is the recent Danny Masterson situation. We're dealing with a celebrity with lots of money, really popular. He's dated several girls over the years. They've only in the past, I don't know, really spoken out in the past 5 years to 10 years, but they tried going to the police, some of them. Some of them didn't want to say anything. They were embarrassed. He was known as the donkey puncher or something. He would get them, drug them. They'd be unconscious from his date rape drug, and he would go full speed ram in the anus, and they would bleed. And they literally would go to the police and try to get him in trouble. Scientology tried to stop him. Simple point is that's upper echelon of society celebrity status, that these were people, some of them that were dating him. He was with them when he was doing this stuff. And look, they found him guilty now. He's actually being locked up. I don't know how long, very long time, but you're talking about upper echelon. Yeah. And they were embarrassed. They were ashamed. The whole
Who in the
thing.
world named it? Who named it? What he was doing? Like, was that a name that he gave it?
I think the
when
reason
he was doing it, you know, to like.
Yeah.
I guess the only thing I can think of is that according to what Karen de la Carriere was saying, who's an ex-Scientologist, you can call her the queen of ex-Scientology. She described it as like an actual donkey comes up and then just boom, tries to go full throttle into mating with the other sex. So this is what he did, but they were unconscious. So like he got charged for this stuff. And anyway, I
mean,
can't.
how fun can that be? Sleeping with someone who's unconscious. I mean, I don't know about you, but I'm not into that. I would like them to be, you know, at least engaged in some type of
I mean,
way,
somebody
you know?
was a good friend of mine was telling me recently that I haven't but I trust her, saying that like men are not statistically hired to do like certain jobs around corpses for that reason.
So it's a thing.
Yeah. Again, I haven't read the secondary literature or anything on that. I don't know that I'd want to. But one of the other things that I think is really telling here, it's not just a matter of the woman has to cry out. And I mean, that could mean that after the rape, she walks outside, and you see this in some of the stories in the Bible. She walks outside and cries out, "I got raped." But if she doesn't do it immediately, then like nobody's going to believe her.
That's crazy.
And there are some outside the Bible, some of the Near Eastern law collections that deal with this. There are some laws that say that she has to actively fight back. And I talk about it in volume 2, I think.
Volume 2. I meant to mention, you have both volumes. Volume 1, Volume 2, really good books. They're on Audible. They're on Amazon, of course. You get the paperback, hardback. This is the hardback. And let me tell you, a couple people tried to take advantage of me. I threw these books at them. And it stopped the perpetrator from continuing. This is about 10 pounds, I'd say. So throw that at them and you're good. Just shameless plug for you, Josh, and the hard work you're doing. I want to pull back for 1 second. I think this is an important point to highlight. And I want to get to the motivation behind why are they defending these ancient laws. 2 things I want to say, and then I'll just throw out there. Evolution. Number 1, as a society, you can see how some of these really man-made, and I'm using man as an even gender here, okay, to try and say like the male in this, man-made laws. These are not God. They could say God said, but these are man-made. And I'm looking at them and I'm thinking, if I look at nature, animals that work in tribes and the way that they are, alpha males that are competing with other alpha males and they own the women in the tribe. The women can try and fight back, but ultimately the alpha male is the one. Look at lions, look at gorillas, look at chimpanzees and the kind of way that their communities work. And see humans, we're hunter-gatherers, not too long ago. Eventually agricultural, so you have to be more systematic about how you're producing your food, smarter, harvest, the whole nine. But you can see the date, the expiration date on these laws as we evolve. And you and me and Ryan see this. Then we turn over and we look at, why would someone want to try and say, yeah, but at least they didn't kill them. They just cut their hands off. There are still countries today that practice these kind of things that are backwards. So I say backwards because as humans, you would think we'd all want to move forward.
Yeah.
But no, you have very fundamentalist Muslim societies that I'm friends with some of these people who are calling liberal inquisition. We're in a liberal inquisition. They want us to think and act like that. No, we want the law from the 7th century to be the law of all time. We want the law of Moses to be the law of all time. And they, of course, equate all the law codes as if Moses said them or whatnot. What the heck is the motivation here?
And I think this is why John Collins' work on this is so important. And if people haven't read it, he's got like a 2019 publication called What Are Biblical Values? And it's an excellent little read, 200 pages. I mean, it's so good because he goes through all of these issues. Essentially, when you take a position on biblical inerrancy and you say, this is the inspired word of God, it's infallible, right? It's handed down from on high. It is true in everything that it says. That becomes a snapshot in morality in human history. That's what happens. So the clock stops ticking. Moral progression stops because you say, like, we don't have another inspired text coming like in 1000 CE. We didn't get an update or something. So it's like this one right here. This is what we've got. And if it says here, kill homosexuals, well then, God's word from on high. It's what we should be doing, right? And if it says, that this is the value of X person, you either have to operate utilizing that as your baseline, or because of your current moral intuitions and moral progression, you have to say, well, it couldn't mean that. So that's why when you see these discussions about slavery, like the text is not ambiguous about owning slaves in the Old Testament or in the New Testament for that matter. But that's why you have the apologetics, because on the one hand, they want inerrancy to extend to the very letter, right? And in so doing, this is the word of God. And therefore, if it says you can do X or I endorse X or whatever, then that's like part and parcel, right? As he said in Aladdin, the whole genie gig. And so then you have to say something like either, yep, we're going with this. Yeah, we're going with this, but it can't mean that.
Or like some Christians I know who are more progressive in their approach who say, I'm going to cherry pick. For me, I don't need it. I like looking at it, studying it, kind of like a science. I don't need this book. And she fought me for a long time when I was a fundamentalist, believing like you described. She'd go, I don't trust it. Men wrote it. She had an intuition. Her instinct was men wrote it. You can't tell me that something in there isn't.
And when I meant men, I meant humans. Yeah. Humans wrote it, but
you weren't wrong.
Men wrote it, at the same time. But what I was saying was humans wrote it, which means we are very selfish beings. Naturally, it's like, instilled in all of us. We all have selfish tendencies. No matter how giving you might be, you look out for you first, right? Mm-hmm. Which is considered selfish. You don't think that, let's just say God was real and God really spoke the words through to them for them to write. You don't think they put something in there to benefit them, And that's what I used to tell him. And he's like, no, it's not. It's from God. And I'm like, dude, no.
So then we're driving to the beach one day.
Oh my gosh.
You could tell it better than I can.
No, you can tell it.
And I just was like, honey, guess what? She's like, what? I'm like, men wrote the Bible.
And she said, you just want to sin.
No, she looked at me like,
said, are you fucking kidding?
Literally. And I was just like, yeah, but I can actually prove it. So I still had to be right in a way, but because I wanted to still I was like, you were right. And we laughed.
You did say it, but you didn't prove it.
Right.
Yeah. Because my proof was, my common sense, but
my proof is I'm smarter than you, right?
My proof is, my instincts say and my intuition says that's not accurate. Yeah. But, I just had a lot of doubts, and I tried to believe in the stories. And it's not that I don't believe that there's not a higher power.